Claire, if we could make one piece of merchandise that you thought fit really like our ethos, mantra, mission, whatever you want to call it, but was also practical and pragmatic, it was useful. In your mind, what might that be?
I guess it would be some way of making myself not available to my kids, like something that would show them now is not the ideal time with which to confront me with something. How would you describe a product like that?
Well, first of all, that's really the long version of it. That's like the scientific name of our show is now is not the right time to confront me with something is not right now, which it turns out is also something you can get fucking carved into a piece of wood in the shape of a door handle knocker thing, like they put on hotels.
Do not disturb sign.
Do not disturb sign. And instead of saying do not disturb, it can say not right now.
Use it for when you are recording your favorite parenting podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Use it when you are in an actual business meeting. Use it when you are taking a well-deserved nap.
Want to watch a movie without them? Check. Want to watch a movie with only one of them, but not the other one? Check. Want to take a well-deserved dump? Want to take a well-deserved nap? How about a shower? I mean, all of these things. It's great. The point is, we've made 50 of them from some really nice folks on Etsy. They're real wood. Here's the deal, friends. The first 50 of you to leave us a real 5-star positive review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify and send us a picture of it in draft so we can see that it was actually yours. Send us a screenshot to questions@notrightnow.show. If you're in the first 50, we'll reply and say congratulations and thank you. And we will send you a link asking for your shipping information. And then we will send you your door hanger thing that says not right now. And then you can tell all your friends about it.
And these reviews don't have to be over the top. They don't have to be long. They don't have to be clever. You can say, loved it. You can say, feels like they are inside my house.
Mm-hmm.
You can say, a pleasant way to pass an hour. Don't reinvent the wheel. Your brain cells are limited. We understand.
Yep. So are ours, which is why I still don't know what to call these. But we've got them. They're available. And we would love to send one to you. So first 50. Again, that's just a reminder. We're doing it because really every one of these reviews counts, supposedly. I don't trust anything, but we'll take it and it's fun. I remember a parent being like, it gets a lot easier. And I'm like, great, fuck you, thank you, but that doesn't help right now. Welcome to Not Right Now, the podcast about parenting through all of this.
We'll be talking about / crashing out over topics like mental health and gummies and wine and perimenopause and just giving up.
Or not. Don't give up yet until you get the pop-up notification about democracy when you are truly, for once, just trying to be present with, I don't know, man, whatever your kid is trying to tell you that you don't understand or care about or you're not allowed to say back to them. It doesn't matter. It's not an advice show.
It's a you're not alone, and you're also not crazy for screaming in the shower kind of show. I'm Claire Zulke from Evil Witches.
And I'm Quinn Emmett from Important Not Important.
You can find details on anything we talk about in the show notes or at our website, notrightnow.show.
And if you like what you hear today, please share it with a parent who needs it or who might laugh and tell their kids to be quiet. And then drop us a nice little 5-star review.
And reminder, you can send questions or feedback to questions@notrightnow.show.
Claire, this is a special episode. Remember after school specials?
Yes.
Anyways, world. So this is our first real special episode. It is a Q&A or mailbag or whatever we want to call it. Our wonderful listeners, at our request, send in a bunch of great questions and feedback and things like that. And what we're going to do is our best to discuss them out loud on the fly, because, Lord, what else is parenting right now than making it up on the go while the information keeps changing, getting it wrong a lot of the time, and offering advice that other parents try and it doesn't work for them because every kid's different. So, are you ready to dive into this, Claire?
I'm excited and I'm grateful to everyone who wrote in, and thank you for, taking a chance on us and listening. I'm always pleasantly surprised and delighted when someone says they enjoyed what we're doing.
I know, it's so thoughtful. It's amazing how many more people respond to you than to me with those sort of things. My friends are just like, great job, fuckhead. Exciting news, in the future, we will record something like one Q&A episode a month, maybe some other bonus content. It'll be available to two groups of people: important members and evil witches, paid subscribers. Is that what you call them?
Yes.
Super witches? If you're already one of those, that's great. You will get details on how to access your brand new private feed soon, which is really exciting, in whatever player you'd like. And if you're not already an important member or an Evil Witches paid subscriber, you can check the show notes for the links on how to do it. Very exciting stuff. Got to pay the bills here. So, okay, our first Q&A, again, this is not an advice show. We are not, professionals in any real medical capacity or any other. I don't have any hard skills. So take it for what it is. Princess Bride, again, it's a parenting show, but that word doesn't mean what you think it means. It is what it is. So our first question I've got here, Claire, is about essentially someone's asking, I'm trying to make some friends here on the playground. Is this real friendship or is it other parents just commiserating? Which, by the way, is not a bad thing. But what I'm going to do, Claire, is I'm going to play it. It's 1 minute. Okay.
So I was thinking about this question yesterday while talking to my husband. And the question is, how can you tell if you're really connecting with someone or if you're just connecting over the superficial and very real, all-consuming challenges of parenting? We're working on establishing friendships as our kids are getting a little older, being 3 and 6, no longer babies. And we're kind of struggling to find the right match friendship wise for people who are really aligned with us in a bunch of ways. But it's hard to tell, am I connecting with someone because we have a deep connection, or am I just connecting with them because they are also parenting in a modern American hellscape? Is this a case where I should just accept good enough, where if we connect about modern American parenting, that's enough for a friendship? Is it enough for a friendship? These are the questions I have. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any wisdom or experience you might have to share. Thank you. Love your podcast.
It is a good question.
Right? It's good. Let me start here. We've established before that you're more social and a better person than I am. So you make new friends, right? At least you put yourself in a place to do that with school and volunteering and all that stuff. Off the cuff, what are your make or breaks for a new friend? You're going into this, what are you just that's a no-go?
If they don't have a sort of twisted or silly sense of humor, if I can't say I hate my kid or I want to kill you or shut up, not to their face, but, kind of behind their back, and they don't laugh or indicate that they get it in some way. I hate to say it. And of course, I can be friends with people who are not like this, but if they are incredibly sincere and I feel like I can't be a little bit sarcastic and snarky, then I kind of slot them in a place where I'm we can be great, block friends, school friends. I respect you. I trust you, but I'm not necessarily going to be giving you my deepest shit or giving you everything I got. So yeah, I think that's my first inclination, which might sound superficial, but I just need to, I think being able to hold on to that snarky sense of humor and offhanded and to be irreverent about it all, I think is really important to me.
I always and this doesn't always present itself quite as organically or nearly as organically as that or the situation this listener is describing, but I always love the rule of, there's a few of them and they're kind of cliche, but I like them. And the first one is basically how do they treat servers, essentially? If we're out and it's 40 fucking kids out to lunch, remember you sent the picture yourself at McDonald's, sitting at another table. If that parent's a dick to the people, I'm not even going to bother. Forget anti-vaxxer and all that other crazy shit. Are they carrying a firearm? Forget all that. That's just you're not a good person. I'm out.
Yeah, I would agree. Someone complains about the school secretary, having a bad attitude. I already would be sorting that person out, I guess, to begin with. That's more of you lack a certain kind of empathy or big picture situation.
Totally. But it's all of here's what it comes down to. Is it someone you want to either by invitation or proactively actually spend more time with? Because here's the thing, when she said that addendum about, should I settle for this, essentially, I think of the argument for why Pluto is technically not a planet anymore. And I remember one scientist saying, what we need to do is back up and redefine planets. But clearly Earth and fucking Jupiter and Pluto are not the same thing. These are all very different things.
Yeah.
And I think friendship is what is it? It's not the same as it was in high school. My buddy has the quote from, oh God, what's the movie where the kids find the dead body from when we were growing up? Fuck.
Stand by me.
Stand by me, where it's, I've never had friends like I had when I was 12 years old.
Right.
Does anybody? It's totally different. But I think, what do you need? How are you defining it? And no one else gets to define it for you,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, it's interesting because I've just kind of put my finger on this, that I've been grieving and feeling a little bit uncomfortable about something and I couldn't quite figure it out. And I realized that I have moved through life stages since my kids were born, which sounds maybe strange, but I feel like it was so acute the first 10 years of my kid's life that it was like we were in new parenting together. And now I have moved through, like we've gone through different schools, or the kids are into different things. I'm into different things of different concerns. And it just feels strange. Yeah, it's just life. It's a little bit scary and sad. I think what I really crave and need, especially when the kids were younger, I could tell that if someone was a parent and they did not want to acknowledge their identity outside or pre-parenthood, and that they indicated that they were all in and nothing else. I mean, I know every emotion is normal, but if someone couldn't understand why I would be excited to go away by myself for a weekend, even if they didn't feel exactly the same way, if they couldn't get that,
Mhm.
or if they couldn't understand why I would feel sad that I wasn't getting work satisfaction during maternity leave, if they were like, but you've got everything now, like,
Mhm.
I think that's a real fundamental thing for me, is that even if another mom like is loving parenthood so much, if she can't even see that aspect of yourself and that struggle and that juggle of the pre-kid you or the you that doesn't exist without kids, I think that's a non-starter for me. But yeah, I'll start with that, but I have other thoughts, but go ahead.
It's interesting because, and again, so much of this starter relationship you might be having or not having, or they might not seem up to it either, which totally get it, right? If they're just like, hey, clearly I'm exhausted, don't approach, keep hands and feet inside the vehicle. Like, it sounds like what you're saying is they need to have at least some sort of like ingrained empathy, even if they're not in the same situation as you or same stage of parenting, or they don't even have kids, or they're a teacher and their kids are grown up and they get it. I mean, we were flying once. Again, our kids were 3 under 3 at one point. We used to go back and forth, Virginia to California, and we had the whole thing, kids screaming on the airplane, this and that. And I remember, so cliche, some parent was like, I don't even if iPads even existed at this point, but I remember a parent being like, it gets a lot easier. And I'm like, great, fuck you, thank you, but that doesn't help right now. And I saw some, parents in the airport recently, 3 tiny fucking kids, and they're going through hell to go take their kids to some grandparent or something. And I did the thing. And I was like, look at my morons. They don't even talk to me anymore. It does get easier, but I tried to do it from a place of empathy. It gets easier, but I acknowledge what you're going through is gnarly. And I hope if you're not a disconnected parent that you can at least have that. It does make me think, though, a little bit about, Derek Thompson wrote a really good article in The Atlantic. He spent like a year on about the loneliness epidemic, which is hitting not just old people who are living in these McMansions by themselves, or not just in the UK and Brexit, like everybody. And I think it really comes down to this, ignore phones and kids don't hang out and all this. Like, it's, what do you need, and do you know what you need yet? And right now,
Yeah.
and then it comes down to, okay, then can I fit that in somewhere? If someone asks me to come hang out or I want to have them over.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, and we talked about this in the episode about like drinking and stuff, that when your kids are really little, it is like army buddies, basically, when you're in the
Hmm.
trenches with someone.
Hmm.
And like, really, you can base a friendship around if your kids are the same age, if you like the same kind of wine, if one of you has a place to hang out and you can tolerate being together for a couple hours, like for a couple years of your life, like that might be all you need for a friendship.
Yeah, bar's pretty low.
I mean, the thing is that the thing that's tricky is that whether or not you have kids, like life is going to be like that anyway. You may have some work friend and you're like, this person is like my bestie forever. Like they get me and then they move or they get promoted or, whatever. And then you don't talk and you fall apart. I have friends like whose kids we were so close. And then, the kid might be in a different homeroom or something like that. Or, COVID was a real shaker. So it's really hard to know ahead of time. But I would say, frankly, if you can communicate, I'm talking to moms, dads are another beast, but if you can at least send a couple funny text messages to each other that can be silly and make you smile, that aren't necessarily about, what time is drop off or whatever.
You don't have to go as far as the messages you and I send each other.
Right. I know. If you can make a joke, honestly, I think one of my touch points with other witches, if someone says, I'm going to murder my husband, the other person says, I'll be there with a tarp. no
Hmm.
questions asked.
Hmm.
That's kind of like, a shorthand for I'm there for you. I see you,
It's
so
what's his face from the town, right? Jeremy Renner saying, "Whose car are we going to take?" That's it. And yeah, I think I'm at the age I'm very turning into Clint Eastwood, like shaking my rake in the yard. Like when you ask, should I just settle for this? Again, like one, figure out what you need if you don't already know it, and don't be afraid to be like, I need the world's most like basest existence among two people or more. But at the same time, don't let anyone else define it for you. Like whatever the settling is, it's like mine is totally different. I'd like to say I didn't have FOMO for a long time. I really didn't, I think, compared to most people, but you still have a little social anxiety of being left out or this or that. And part of that was being out in Hollywood. But when I finally embraced, that's just not me, man. I'm not comfortable
yeah.
with it. Not only does it like not fucking spark joy, but it is not comfortable. Then figure out there's always going to be somebody out there who is happy to just like you said, sit on the couch and drink $2 chuck.
Too much stuff would be great. That would be a good lesbian bar. I think one of the things that made me kind of realize what witches was that earlier on when I was a parent, I was very attuned and ready to feel defensive of moms who were making choices different from me that I presumed would be like more judgy, more crunchy, like who were like all in on breastfeeding, which I wasn't, for instance, or all in on natural births or really into co-sleeping. And I, for a while, was like, well, if you make these choices, that must mean that you like judge me as a parent. And then after enough time on the planet, I realized there's like people who make parenting choices that are different from me, but we can honestly laugh about the same things or commiserate over the same things, like you may be homeschooling your kids and I'm not, but also if we could laugh over just like how stupid our kids can be, honestly, or just like how burnt out we feel or how badly we need to like, unwind at 6 p.m. or don't want to see them. Finding that little touchstone, even despite the differences that you may think they fundamentally make you different. So that was helpful for me, was to realize there's people who make different choices for me, but they're still so human that I shouldn't judge them, basically thinking they're going to judge me.
Yeah, and this thing does grind you down so fucking much that you do at some point have to look up and realize, oh, I'm a husk. And the good news is I only have to fulfill those husk things for myself and someone else, whether it's your partner who can't fulfill all the things or a friend who the same thing. You're going to have different kinds of friends. What kind of music they're into? Do they like art? Nobody fucking cares, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't fucking matter. It's the basest shit.
And I would say one last thing is like a good thing about parenting is that it really strips away your dignity to
Oh,
a
yeah.
place where, I mean, I have a couple mom friends who I just was like, I like like you seem cool. I like the way you seem. And often that's reciprocated. And if not, I'm sure it already hasn't been, and I've forgotten about it already, because that also makes me feel better knowing that every other parent, no matter how perfect they seem, gets shit under their fingernails, either literally or metaphorically.
Hmm.
So, I think getting offline to certain stat and not comparing yourself to other folks like that also makes a big difference. So I guess like my answer, I don't know if we gave this listener any good advice, but
I tried to set it up as they're not going to get any.
I know, but it's a hard question. And again, like I think you have to be sort of open to the fact that some friendships are like going to be about the season, like
Hmm.
this might be your bestie for the summer. And then when they go back to school, you might just be like a see you sometime, person. But yeah, I think that a lot of it again is if you feel like you could have been friends with them before kids or around kids, or you see each other in the same kind of struggle, then that's a good starting off place for sure.
I also think there's a lot of room in what we're missing a lot of, and we've talked about a little bit with, church going down and people not hanging out except online and things like that, is there's a lot of room for that middle ground of, like you said, people you only see in certain activities, certain seasons, certain school years, whatever it might be, who aren't necessarily someone you might accept an invitation for during your precious time or proactively use, but that you're friendly with. And that is really the scaffolding of community that can go a long way to helping people at least feel not alone. It can be something, an activity to actually look forward to, right?
Yeah. Well, and then I think one other idea, and this is sort of how witches started, was that a friend of mine was like, I want to meet cool moms, and that made me personally want to be like, okay, here are all like a bunch of cool women I know who all kind of have a same sense of humor or personality about parenting. And they have totally disparate, by and large, they don't live in the same universes, but they would get a kick out of knowing each other. So I think almost like you have a job if you know a parent who you like or person you like, and you're like, hey, do you know any moms who were like have kids my age who I might like, and they wouldn't think it's weird if we like met up at the playground? Go out, ask for a referral, basically. And yeah, again, it can be really hard. It can feel so random, like when you're at the library and you're like, I have no idea what this person's about. I don't know if they, feel the way I feel.
Yeah, no, I get it. They're probably a murderer. But guess what? Like some of your real friends are too.
Yeah, honestly, yes. It's a very vulnerable stage of life, that's for sure. But I mean, the person who called, just the fact that they put that question out there is a thought-provoking question, and just asking people about themselves is like half the battle. So they'll get there. There certainly will be some chaff, along with the wheat, but that's part of
Yeah, no. Let me finish by saying if you listeners have any good stories or tips or ideas or anecdotes about how you've either successfully or unsuccessfully met or have hung out with other parents or other people during, like you said, this very vulnerable stage where you got nothing, right? The
yeah.
emperor really has no clothes. Please just send them in again. Voice notes are fun. We're figuring out how that fucking works. But it helps. I mean, that's the great thing about witches, man. It's in print, but it matters.
Well, thank you. But yeah, please call in if you have struggles, if you found solutions, if you've heard of smart things, if you've had realizations. Yeah, please share it, because it all also depends on where you live as well. So we're lucky that we live in
Totally.
a place where like my husband can meet 20 other guys like him who have beards and glasses and electric cars and, are into the same things, and they can meet up at the cool craft bar. But that's a different story if you live somewhere else. So.
Hey parents, how would you like a show that makes bedtime, bath time, mealtime, and break time more fun for your kids? Then check out Who Smarted, the podcast that turns everyday moments into awesome learning adventures for kids aged 7 to 11 and grown-ups too. But don't just take my word for it. Here's what Mom Jenny says.
I love Who Smarted because it makes learning fun for my kids. And I love it too. We listen together on car rides, and it sparks the best conversations. It's the perfect way to make the most of our time in the car and connect as a family. Who Smarted is the podcast my kids ask for every single car ride.
With fun, fast-paced episodes on science, history, and so much more, Who Smarted makes learning exciting for the whole family. We invite you to listen now for free wherever you get your podcasts. That's Who Smarted, wherever you get your podcasts.
Who Smarted?
Okay, number 2. And it looks like we're probably only going to get to 2 this week, which is great. We can save them and do them when we can here. Okay, I'm going to read this one. It came in via email. It says, I have a daughter who is 8 who was recently diagnosed with ADHD and anxiety. The whole process of getting through an evaluation, meeting with the school, finding a therapist, finding a psychiatrist, the trial and error with different medications, etc., has been so disruptive to a kid who is already having such a hard time. Man, do I feel that. To top it off, so much of the advice and treatment for kids with ADHD is geared towards kids that are disruptive and high energy, not kids that are spacey and distracted. We haven't found a medication that works. Therapy feels like a jamming another obligation into her week, and she doesn't qualify for any services at school due not being behind academically. So, how do we help this kid? Everything that's supposed to help feels like it's creating more anxiety. And I just first want to lead with, again, like, we've both got kids who, I don't want to say suffer from this, even though that's a subjective word we can put onto it, but who have been diagnosed with this and deal with it, and the family deals with it. But we are not physicians, psychiatrists, psychologists, any of the above. But at the same time, it is very much versions of a similar everyday experience. And we were both definitely in a spot like this at one point. Mine was early in the pandemic, actually, and that made it easier and harder. They weren't in a classroom as much, but holy shit, was it impossible trying to get them to focus on a fucking computer screen for 10 seconds. But we did the whole evaluation remotely. I mean, it was early in the pandemic. A gentleman who was very helpful, and we found some things that helped us. We really tried to, and again, just sharing my experience here, really tried to find the most common sense, but also like reputable, science-driven psychology, as much as that can be reputable, and pros and cons are driven versions of what is actually going to be helpful to most children. That also applies to my specific child in our family, situation, what are we willing to try to do? And for us, that was a combination of day-to-day expectations and modifications, but also some medicine. And we've changed medicine once, but it was actually just because, and any ADHD parent knows this, it was fucking impossible to find the first one for 2 years. I was calling 10 pharmacies a month. It's complicated. It's really hard. I have a whole bunch of books I can recommend that I can put in the show notes just to help ground folks in this kind of stuff, including some books for the kids to make them feel not as alone. That's actually where we really realized, oh, they have helped themselves as much as they can, and we've actually done as much as we can, is when they became much more self-aware about it and started to get really down about their ability to much more spacey, distracted, not able to pay attention. It's all fun and games until they start to get really down, and then that's when it hurts everybody. So that was really our experience. Do you want to start with yours again? I want to start with commiseration here.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing that is really sucks is that they're kids, and sometimes it can be really hard to discern what is quote unquote normal kid behavior, emotions, lots of ups and downs, feeling good, feeling bad versus what is a diagnosable kind of thing. And then, if you get online, the internet can be amazing, except when it can be the worst thing ever. And you find people who are diagnosing your kid who don't know what your reality is, people whose kids, like their diagnosis might be kind of like yours, but then with comorbidities. And and the medication thing is incredibly difficult. You don't know how long you wait to see if it's actually working. There's so many phases and, just even if it's wintertime, for instance, like our kid was having a difficult winter and we were talking with his therapist about, does he need his medication changed or is it just dark and cold and he doesn't have enough to do? And I really hate the whole medication. I mean, I'm glad for the medication. We needed it so bad, but we also went through a phase of him not being on the right meds. And again, it took us a long time to be like, is he like this all the time or is it the wrong meds? So I think being in touch with your pediatrician a lot is really good. If you have time yourself to be in touch with a psychologist, a pediatric psychologist who specializes in kid meds, they may know more than your pediatrician. I will say, caller, you may probably not want to hear advice on more media, but if you haven't watched The Disruptors, it's a documentary that a friend recommended. It's on YouTube about kids with ADHD, and it touches on how it presents differently in girls than in boys in terms of, I think you mentioned kind of being withdrawn or having relationship issues compared to being hyperactive. It's very validating to see other parents dealing with this, and it's not going to make you feel ashamed. Don't worry. It's not going to be about what a guilt trip like you should be on. But I found that really helpful. I think one thing that really helped us that maybe won't disrupt your kid's life per se is family therapy, because if you have a partner or spouse, I think it's really huge to get on the same page about how to react to your kid and how to have a game plan for when times are tough and stressed out. You can have a shared strategy. And one of you isn't arguing, let her take a break versus, no, pick her up and put her in the car, or when it's time to expect a lot from your kid versus give them a break,
Can we hold on that for 1 second? Sorry. Yeah. That shouldn't be unexpected to anyone who's listening. And that's, by the way, for anything your kids are going through, because at least for us, it feels very primal. And hopefully you can take a step back and realize it's okay to want to feel like, no, there's nothing wrong with my kid. And by the way, there's nothing fucking wrong with your kid. It's just, we've all got 1,000 different things. It's fucking complicated, right? But it's very easy for parents, like you said, one to be like, well, I think we should just go without medicine for this, or I think we should just do this, or they just need to run around more before bed. No, running around before bed wakes them up. It's hard, but a lot of it comes from one, again, information is a threat. And two, again, you just want to feel something. So again, less a unified front and more a unified experience, like family therapy can be awesome.
Yeah, I feel for this color because you go through these phases, frankly, even when I feel like we're in a pretty good place right now as we're talking with our kid with ADHD. But like I said, just over the winter, we were struggling a lot and, things may be better at school, but then worse at home. Or they're fine with their homework, but then they suck at staying asleep. And I think that a good thing, again, about family therapists, if not for the kid, for you, is to be like, okay, we have someone to talk about this with. And that just brings a sense of relief. So you're not Googling in the middle of the night. I will say, for your own sake, I feel like nighttime is the worst time in terms of just having the strongest reactions, of being the most sad and wondering what the hell you're going to do. If you can find parents who have a kid who, slightly resembles your kid, if not exactly the same diagnosis, but maybe the way they behave or the same things, if you can just talk to them and just have a chat about what's helped them, just ask them the questions. If you can find a safe space, that just really helps, that someone will understand and not judge you for saying, I'm tired of doing all this work and I feel bad for her, but we got to do it. Or, it just is really important to get at least resources, because there are so many resources and some of them are just really not for you. Like I remember I got some book called like What Your ADHD Kid Wish You Knew. And it felt like the world's biggest guilt trip. I feel like it was like, I wish you would stop being so mad at me, mommy. Maybe that's true, but that's not like helping us with our
helpful.
progress.
It's not practical. Yeah. I mean, there was a big, and we can put it in the show notes, I think it was a New York Times article recently about ADHD diagnoses and how kids are being diagnosed now and what it means and what we know scientifically. And are we diagnosing too much or medicine or this or that? And the answer, like everything, I mean, we don't know how the fuck a thought works or depression or all these things. Every time we pull the string more and more on brains or guts or both, we find out like, we might not figure it out. One of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite neuroscientists is, what if the brain can't know itself? Basically, what if we're just not like capable of that? And that'll send you on a spin. But there are relatively, again, for a lot of folks, not most folks, a lot of folks, proven ways to help your kid and help each other. There's little reminders. And again, like I'm sure the definition of how ADHD, in this sense, the spacey and distracted, or what they call executive control issues, works or doesn't work or whatever. The current version is, the grossly simplified, and again, not a scientist, not a doctor version, is essentially like, we all get distracted. Those kids might be a kid or an adult who doesn't get the signal to come back to what you were doing in time as the rest of us, essentially. So they stay distracted, right? I got a kid who might, if we got 10 kids playing in the front yard, in the backyard, hide and seek or something, he'll go hide and not realize that no one has come and looked for him for an hour, right? Just time can mean nothing there. They just don't get the signal. Again, that's grossly oversimplified, and I'm sure it'll change by the time we fucking publish this. But, try to just remember that. Empathy-wise, hey man, we're all this way, right? We just might have a slightly easier version. The other thing, and I looked back at the text of this note, and I, as a calendar person and plates in the air person, and I know you feel this way and talk about it, their note here that therapy feels like jamming another obligation into her week. I mean, I fucking get it. We have another kid who really struggles with a lot of anxiety and depression and shame and things like that. And doing therapy pretty regularly was so helpful and such a logistical pain in the ass, because it was like 25 minutes away in this small town. It's impossible for something to be 25 minutes away here as opposed to Los Angeles. That's like a win. But I will say, if you find the right person, and it can be totally different for everyone, whether it's a psychologist who is just, not just, but a lot of talk therapy, or an actual psychiatrist who might just be the person who ends up prescribing the medicine because they're a medical doctor, or some combination of them, and or family therapy, whatever. It can be like, it can be like exercise in the chemical sense, but it can be like, this is actually a thing that can improve the rest of the week, if that makes sense. Yes, in time and space and family logistics, it can make it more difficult, but it actually can, especially over time. You might have less time, but it could improve that time, if that makes sense. It's like people trying to find a workout during the day. Yes, it's hard, but if you give it enough few weeks, you might end up having more energy for the rest of the day. You might do better, you might sleep better, et cetera, et cetera.
And you might not need it forever as well. You may realize that after a couple months, you don't need to talk as often. I think it helps, again, if you can find people either online or in real life who can commiserate with you. Like, it just helps to know that there's so many people out there who have their thing, and they may not even reveal it. I was just talking the other day with a friend of mine who, they're a family that travels they are big travelers, and their kids have seen parts of the world that I can only dream of. And on the one hand, you're like, wow, they must have it made. They go to Disneyland all the time. But her daughter has complete school avoidance and will refuse to go to school, and absolute refuse, and doesn't give a shit. And the mom is certainly not pleased about this, but she also sees her daughter as a whole. And she's like, when my kid is an adult, she's going to be famous one day. I just know for her ability to make art and the way she thinks. But this is like not her stage of life. And to me, it is just very, I don't know what the word is, validating, soothing, reassuring to know that there's parents out there who have this whole holistic issue where your kid has this, because school is, like, even though we all love our kids going to school and like we want the best for them, it is not made for kids, especially in this day, So it's no surprise that some kids, and I don't mean to speculate, but I imagine if you have a daughter and there's so many well-behaved, docile daughters in the world who do what they're supposed to do and listen and don't cause a hard time, that if your kid isn't doing that, you may be like, why is she the one who's not doing what she's supposed to do? I mean, I, feel that way about a boy, but I feel like boys are kind of famous for not necessarily sitting still. But anyway, I just think that it just gives you, because the other thing I was going to say is don't feel like you're supposed to love this. Don't feel bad if you are exhausted or wondering what happened, or it's okay to wonder if you made a mistake sometimes being a parent. And I don't mean that your kid was a mistake, but just when you think back to your life before kids and you're like, damn, I remember when I used to sleep in and I had to do laundry once a week, and I had very little responsibilities. It's not your job to love this, and to, feel no resentment towards it. It's okay to just be exhausted. But the fact that you care, honestly, I know it doesn't make it easier in the moment, but like you're already on the right track.
You are. And by the way, speaking of people whose job it is, and this just might be these specific people, but I really don't believe that categorically. We have been so lucky to get tremendous help from our school's guidance counselors. So the person said she doesn't qualify for any services at school due to not being behind academically. Anybody can go to the guidance counselor. And those people can often be exceptional, especially at the 8 years old, elementary, early middle school years. Like, these people have seen every version of it. They've seen sibling stuff. They've seen parental stuff. They've seen kid stuff, eating stuff, all the things. And, we've had just, hey, guidance counselor, we'll go around our kid and, they're old enough to know now and just say, hey, do you mind like inviting them to lunch once a week or every 2 weeks and making it a fun thing? And then just hang out. Again, it's like dealing with the tiger. Just build trust and hang out for 3 weeks. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And by the way, if that's not something the school does or that you do, that's fine. I'll give anybody money for anything to help kids and help the schools. But that kind of stuff's helpful because it's just somebody who like knows the language in a way.
Or gives the kids something to relax and be themselves over without having to do the bullshit of like everyday school socialization.
It's a fucking break.
Yeah. And also, that sounds really crappy. If your school isn't giving your kid any kind of consideration just because they're getting A's or whatever, does that mean that therefore you're supposed to hope that they slip academically to get some attention or some special care? I hope there's someone, maybe a paraprofessional, whether it's like a librarian or lunch lady or bus driver or the nurse or whatever, who can give the kid a little extra TLC for 15 minutes a couple times a week or something like that, just to be like, hey, you doing okay? Like, touch base, I don't know.
The other thing I will say, and again, knowing nothing of whether this parent who wrote in, whether they have a partner or they have grandparents who can help out or friends, or what their home life is like, if whether there's time or anything like this, because again, assuming any of that is a fool's errand in the US these days, they're talking about so much is geared towards kids that are disruptive and high energy, not kids that are spacey and distracted. This is a gross generalization, but again, by way of my wife, we lived in Los Angeles for 15 years and worked with some of the greatest versions of artists alive who are all spacey and distracted. And let your kid fucking hang out and color and be distracted for a while. If you have the time and the ability to do things, it doesn't cost anything. And we all need to space out more, frankly. And if that means going out in nature or whatever, and it's relatively safe, like, great, that just might be a little easier for them. That doesn't mean you can't do all these other things to deal with it. But if they're quiet and spacey and distracted in a room that you've kind of designed, it's like my share plate thing, like in a room that is just full of things where they can do that. Hey man, that's great too. It doesn't have to all be go, go, go all the time.
And it's also okay to choose your battles. Like, I think everyone chooses battles sometimes. Like, I have a friend whose daughter is very school avoidant, different friend. And I think there's just some days they fight it. And it sounds incredibly difficult. Once in a while, they're just like, you know what? what the hell mental health day for you, health day for us
My
all.
wife talks about it all the time. Her mom used to say, you get one mental health day a semester. No questions asked.
Or giving yourself a break, honestly, like taking yourself out to dinner if you have a partner, or hiring a babysitter just to check yourself out, to, because that's the thing, is this is not a guilt trip, because this is incredibly hard, but like it is harder to do this when you are super burnt out. So if you can refresh yourself a little bit, it helps you out, and that helps your kid out too. But yeah, hang on. Like it is not easy, especially, again, I hate to say it, if you go on the internet, like it can be so validating sometimes to hear. Once in a while, you'll hear a cry in the wilderness that you're like, yes, you are me. Thank God. And then other times you'll hear someone be like, did you try the whiteboard? Did you try this reward system? Did you try spanking them? Did you try giving them more tasks to do around the house, or did you just try loving them more? I've had that once.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome.
Did you just try talking at night so they could talk to you and be honest with themselves? Because I do that with my son. And you're like, shut the fuck up. So be mindful of your internet intake. I'm just saying, because it can giveth and it can taketh away.
I'm going to say something which is going to sound crazy on the surface, but I do not know if this listener is a mother or father, any version in between any of those. There's a subreddit called Daddit, Daddit. It's got 1.8 million Dadditors, including me. 309 are online right now. And just like evil witches, there's moms that bounce in there all the time. It is one of the most supportive places I've ever seen in my entire life. And there's 1.8 million people in there. There's someone in there who's dealing with very similar shit, whatever your kid is dealing with. I don't want to say whatever they're suffering with or whatever they got. We've all got stuff. Mm-hmm. Just, like this, don't be afraid to share it if there's nothing else. That's the only thing I can really offer.
Well, the good news is that things will get better. The bad news is that things will get worse again. But with enough time, you'll realize that you are on the right track. And again, you're helping this kid. It is like really throwing spaghetti at a wall. Getting a diagnosis is huge. I think you are already past the worst of it, of being like, what the hell? What is this? And I will say one thing, and you know what? I'll put this in the show notes. A friend of mine, she has a template for a letter. And you can start this maybe in the summer if your kids go to summer camp, or at the start of the school year, where she introduces the kid to the teacher. And she does it in the kid's first person. Hi, I'm Claire. I'm really great at XYZ. I'm really still working on ABC. And some things that could really help me are 1, 2, 3. And I borrowed that template, and my kid's teacher was like, this is amazing. Can I share this with all the kids? I wish all the parents would turn this in. So I said things like, for instance, if you can help it, try not to take away recess from my kid as a punishment. I understand sometimes you need to, but he needs that physical exercise. Or I mentioned that sometimes his brain, he starts talking before he's finished speaking. So he will sound like he's stuttering, and he just is thinking in real time as he's speaking. So I'm give him a second to talk. But I said he also loves having jobs to do. So give him a job like cleaning the board, or, being the line leader. And he loved to sing. So if you ever want to have him be the DJ or something like that. So anyway, I'll share that also with show notes. That starts off the year in a really good way. And it's good for you to get in touch with your kids' strengths, and articulate them and remember them. So yeah, let me find that and I'll share that with you to share.
That's great. I love that. I love that. All right. Well, I know you got to get out of here. This was very fun. Again, please don't there's no legal, medical, any really advice involved here, but we appreciate everyone reaching out. Again, if you have anything to offer from any of these things, write-ins, follow-ups, any of that, please send them in. Questions at notrightnow.show. And that's it. We'll be back with a real episode next time.
Yes. Thank you for listening. Thanks for calling in. Keep it coming. We want to hear from you. This is a conversation. Thank you for the challenging questions. Wishing you the best.
Go get them. You're doing great. That's it for this week.
You're going to make it. You're doing great. Or you're just doing it. Or just you, period.
Just stop right there. But for more, you can hit subscribe right in your podcast player of choice.
Please share our show with another parent in your life, or anyone who might get a kick out of listening to what the hell we're going through.
And if you have literally 3 seconds, just push your thumb against the 5-star review button wherever you might be listening.
But no pressure, honestly. We know you're busy.
Head to notrightnow.show for more, or send us feedback, questions, horror stories, doxing, whatever it is, at questions@notrightnow.show.